Perfect. So, hello everyone. Welcome to Gateway API Inference Extension Community Call. Today is September 4th, and we are going to talk today about a few items. But before we start, please keep in mind that this is a CNCF governed project, and please be kind to another. And the meetings are recorded and are going to be uploaded to YouTube. So with that said, let me just share my screen so we can see the agenda. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
Perfect. So I think I saw Kellen joined. Yeah, so the first item, so maybe before that, I'll see if we had like AIs from previous meeting. So we have here release cadence discussion. Kellen, that was a discussion that you opened. You wanna say something on this topic, or should we just push it to the next week after we finish the release? Kellen is on mute.
He said next week in the chat.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So moving to today's items. So starting with the release update. So I see the comment that Daniel added. So today is the original release date. It's not the original, it was already pushed. So it seems like we're going to cut a release candidate that we are feeling comfortable with. Seems like it's going to happen either today or early tomorrow. And we hope this is going to be a final release candidate, the final one. But I think we do need to give it like few days for some soak time. So there were some issues with scale tests and performance. Kellen did the tests and also the fix. He investigated. I'm assuming that Kellen just chime in if you
Yeah.
can unmute. Yeah.
Can you hear me? Is my audio working now?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yes, that is correct. I feel pretty good about where we are scale wise. You're going to see a performance hit using the prefix cache routing, but that's to be expected. It does more work than the other plugins. So some of that is unavoidable right now. We could look in future releases to changing the architecture. There's some things I think we can move out of the critical path, but for now, I think we're in a pretty good place to release performance-wise.
Yeah. So it sounds good to me as well. And in parallel, I'm going to release today to cut the first release candidate of LLMD scheduler, which will also give us another type of tests from a different angle, not necessarily the same test that were done on these release candidates. So in LLMD, we are testing different configurations with multiple scheduling profiles, and sometimes we hit their issues that we haven't seen in inference extension, but hopefully I hope we won't find any blocker or showstopper. So yeah, I assume updating the milestone release date to something like Monday or Tuesday should be fine, unless you think otherwise. Denion, Rob, Kellen, Shmuel, do you think it's fine?
I would prefer Monday, but otherwise, yeah, I think that's fine.
Yeah. So I think
Monday
we can
sounds good.
target, yeah, let's target the final release date to Monday. And so either today or tomorrow, we'll have the final hopefully the final release candidate, and then we can go out on Monday.
I want to make
Any
sure I understood
other?
that correctly. So we're talking about cutting a release candidate on Monday or cutting the final release on Monday?
No, a release candidate today, or if we won't make it today, so early tomorrow, and then a final release, assuming we don't find any blocker, final release on Monday.
Okay. Can you click on that link there where it shows a V1 milestone?
Yeah, sure.
That's kind of
So
what I was reviewing this to kind of guide, you know, when we release, right? So if we go through here, I believe the first issue, the Inference Pool API review, we could consider that done. Coordinate gateway implementations for Inference Pool GA, we can consider that done. I didn't dive into the third one, but Colin's on the call. Maybe he'd give us an update on document all new changes. That could essentially, even since it's documentation, could be done after the release. There's some wiggle room there. Add the API docs generators to the release. This is actually just updating the release template to make sure that the release manager runs those generators and that the API docs are updated based on the latest API specs. And I think that should be good to go. But it's the last one that really kind of catches my attention. Can you click on the RC validation? It seems like there's a
that one.
lot of RC validation that hasn't been completed yet. And so that makes me feel a little uncomfortable that we establish this validation. And
Yeah, so
yeah.
I think so it's not as it looks like, I think so. So I know there were some testing that were done by, I don't know if he's here, Rahul from Google, and some other folks as well. I'm not sure if the issues are updated with the latest information, but I do know that the GPU, for example, it worked in the test, and also the SIM deployment worked in the test. Yeah, we can probably ping
So
whoever runs the
the
issue.
the only issue I've heard is the CPU deployment.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, me personally, I'm pretty comfortable cutting a release even with the CPU deployment not work usage, and that's not really something Inference Gateway has much control over. The only open issue, I think, is validating the HA deployment. I think some people internally discussed picking that up, but if someone externally wants to pick that up and validate it, that would be great too. And then, yeah, I'll poke people to get them to update the issues. We should be close. It's just I think people just haven't updated yet.
Yeah, and regarding the CPU deployment, so it's not like I've tested it because I had higher priority items to handle, but I had plans to test it, but I do suspect the version of the CPU deployment because we've seen in the GPU that when we use version newer than 0.8.5, then the GPU deployment is not working. And then I assume it's going to hit the same issue with the CPU deployment because we are trying to run their latest release of the CPU deployment, which is higher than that. And I saw a draft PR also from Raul, I think, that he tried to pin the version to 0.8.5 also in the CPU deployment. I wanted to ping him to ask if that is working. Haven't got to do it yet. Kellen, if you're talking with him, it would be good if you can ask. But we do have that PR here.
Yeah, I can.
This is the one, yeah. This is the one. It's marked as draft, and it just pins the version to the right one. So I assume this is the issue that was seen in the CPU deployment, but if not, yeah, I agree with Kellen. It's not a blocker for the release. And either way, I have some doubts that when people are trying to deploy an example, they are going to the release branch and use the manifest from the release branch. I assume the release is only used, to deploy whatever is needed to run inference extension, inference gateway, but then the manifests, I assume, are used from main. Yeah, anyway, let's get the issues updated with the last information and see where we stand. Okay, and I'll push also the release date to Monday, hopefully. Any other updates about the release before we move to the next item? Going once, going twice. Okay, so moving to the next item in the list. So we have here a new member joining the community call, Sailor. I'll let you introduce yourself and talk briefly about this topic, Nginx. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. Hey all, I'm Sailor. I work on Nginx Gateway Fabric, which is a gateway API implementation for Nginx. If you attend the Gateway API meetings, you'll probably see me lurking there most of the time and commenting on things every once in a while. And so we are now dipping our toes into the inference extension, wanting to support it, and being able to configure Nginx as an inference gateway and allowing it to, communicate with the endpoint picker component and all the pieces necessary to support routing this type of traffic. So we just started kind of designing and looking into what it will take for us to be able to implement this API and functionality. So yeah, I just wanted to stop in and say hi, let you guys know that we're going to be doing this, and you might see members of our team pop in from time to time in the meeting or in the Slack channel, just trying to learn as we start building out our support for this.
Yeah, sounds great. So there are two. It's not two issues. It's one issue and one pull request. So as far as I understand, this is the issue that talks about the will to support, and the pull request is like the design, the detailed design.
Yeah, that issue linked is our epic, our overall kind of high level what we want to do, with a lot of new stories that I've kind of written in the past day underneath that about what we think we need to do to implement all of this. And then yeah, that pull request, which actually was merged in today, is our design on what we think we need to do. So if anyone's curious on at least what our approach is going to be, feel free to take a look. Things may change as we start building and realize, oh, we have to do things a little bit different than we thought, but this is kind of our initial, here's what we think we need to do.
Yeah, that sounds great. So I'm going to ping with these details also to Shane. I know back then when he joined the meetings here, I assume you know Shane from Gateway API, Sailor. So he was very interested in getting additional gateways to support inference extension, and Nginx was one of the options that were brought to the table. So I'm happy to see this moving forward, and I think it would be a great addition to have support from Nginx supporting the inference extension.
Yep. Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's just echo that it's awesome to see Nginx. Sailor, you've been great support in Gateway API. So really excited to see you jumping in and getting involved here. And don't hesitate to ask questions or raise issues if things aren't working as expected. But yeah, welcome.
Yeah.
Thanks, Rob.
Definitely. Yeah, so when I added this item to the list and talking earlier this week with Sailor, it popped this new item in the list, next item in the list, that I opened a while ago about the EPP protocol. So as of today, we have this definition of EPP protocol between the gateway and the endpoint picker, where we're using some of the envoy metadata to pass information from the gateway to endpoint picker and back from endpoint picker to envoy. So thinking about Nginx, and if we want to support it, I thought we might want to replace the envoy metadata specific fields with headers. So recently, we had the proposal of Inference Objective, and that introduces a lot of headers in the protocol. So we started to using headers, and I think it might make it easier for other gateways that are not envoy based to support inference extension if we switch into using just HTTP headers instead of envoy specifics. So I'm not sure there is a real advantage in using, yeah, so this is the issue. Maybe I'll go to, I see your hand, Rob. I'll just, 1 second, I'll just open the relevant document. So this is the endpoint picker protocol, and we have here, like, the protocol specifies how do we communicate between the data plane and the endpoint picker. And then you can see it's very, very envoy specific. Here in subset, here it's in when we pass the result, the endpoint picker selected some destination, so we put it in envoy LB. And then we also have the new header that is not used yet, but should be, which indicates the gateway should indicate back to the endpoint picker which endpoint served the request from the list. Yeah, so hands. Rob, I think you were first.
Yeah, so I think this is a good idea or a useful idea to a point. What I would say is I hope we can take endpoint picker protocol and call it, as backwards compatible as everything else, as we're going to V1. So I wouldn't say we should replace anything, but maybe what we could do is, specifically for the responses coming from endpoint picker, like maybe we go ahead and say, actually, that will also include a header, right? So that if you don't understand metadata, like I don't want to make any breaking changes at this point, but additive changes seem useful, as long as implementations would benefit from them.
Yeah, obviously we don't want to do something that no one uses. And if I got it right, you're suggesting to just do both, so we don't break. Yeah, it sounds good. Not sure who is next. Shmuel, it was you, I think.
Maybe, I don't know. I'll go, but I'll go anyways. I won't be shy. So actually, I raised my hand because I thought we were going to run into the problem of the rewrite of headers before the filter. With Abdullah's fit train, what he wants. But I guess that's only related to HTTP router, not necessarily to everything else, maybe.
Yeah, it's
From
not
what I
here.
saw
It's
here,
not.
and for what I saw here, most of these were either things that we're sending back to Envoy via metadata versus using a header to send it back, which is perfectly fine, which would work, or getting things back from the destination endpoint server, which they're going to be getting at its response header, which is probably okay too. So I sort of take back my question.
Yeah, sounds good. Andres?
The audio is really not working for me, at least. I don't know.
Yeah, same here.
Same here. I think he dropped off. Probably going back.
Yeah. There he is.
One thing I'll say here is the concern I would have is information going from data plane to endpoint picker. That may be harder to do both because we have less control over data plane. But we could support both on endpoint picker side, right? So we could support either or a header or this metadata. And similarly, we could populate both on endpoint picker side.
Yes.
Yeah,
sorry, Andres.
we just need to. So that was what I interpreted when you said to support both. But now I'm thinking about it that if we support more than one possible input, we should probably define some order like between them. If we supply both, yeah,
for sure.
Two sources of
Andres?
information, two sources of knowledge is bad usually.
Yeah, it is.
He's gone.
I think, yeah, I think the header is more like the general case and should work for everyone. But I agree with Rob that we don't want to do breaking changes. Yeah, we need to see how to move it forward. So basically, I believe that only one implementation is the best, but yeah, considering the fact that we don't want to break the existing implementations, we might need to sort it out in a different way.
Evening, Andreas is back.
No, not working yet.
Let's see. Andres, do you want to try the chat? Okay. So,
I think, but by the way, I think the real question about this headers versus metadata is really a question to Sailor. And how much, because I don't understand. I understand very little about Nginx, but my guess is that Nginx does not support an envoy external process filter process. Right? You're going to have to implement something. The question is, how much does all this save you in any event?
Yeah. Yeah, good question. In hearing this so far, I'm not sure if these changes would help too much because ultimately Nginx can't initiate gRPC requests natively, which I think is what the endpoint picker is expecting. So we have to build some things on top of that just to be able to initiate that type of request. And so because of that necessary work that we have to do, whether it's changing metadata or headers, I think is not going to be the thing that breaks that workflow. So I don't know if that or if this change will make a huge difference on our end, being that we have to kind of build something on top of Nginx anyway, just for this communication.
do you think, Sailor, it might look like strange if you build something on top and then you pass in like metadata that is called envoy dot something?
Yeah, I mean, it could look strange. Yeah, I would agree with that. Again, not that we can't do that, but yeah,
Yeah, you can. I'm sure you can. I'm just, thinking out loud, trying to figure out if it makes sense to use headers here. I mean, I do think it might look strange for a reader, but at the end, I'm not sure how many people really read the headers or the metadata. Andres, do you wanna give it another try?
Is it better now? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
much better.
Yes.
All right. Sorry, folks. Yeah, so I can give some context here as the person that authored the protocol from the Google side originally. So we never intended this to be Envoy specific, right? The Envoy.lb identifier is a namespace, right? That is the default, which I understand creates some friction, right? But you know that can be changed. It can be just a generic namespace depending on the gateway implementation and the data plane. So that's one clarification point. The other one about headers versus export metadata. We actually already have an example in the protocol of the main key, which is the gateway destination endpoint, that can actually be provided either as a header or as a unstructured entry in the dynamic metadata field. Okay, so we already have an example of supporting both. We could extend that across all of the fields in the metadata that have been introduced after. So I just wanted to add both of those points of clarification. Now, I think we certainly should evolve the protocol, right, to support data planes that are not Envoy based. It was never the intention for this to be Envoy specific. It was a starting point, but you know, let's do what makes sense, right, to make sure that Nginx and other data planes can onboard.
So Andres, the last point you mentioned is actually very, very good. So I never noticed that there is an option to specify here a header. So how do you prioritize if the value was set in both of the options? Which one do you
yeah, I wanted to check
use?
the Envoy. I wanted to check the Envoy implementation to figure out what we do there, or at least our GKE implementation. That should really be called out here in the spec. So if it's not, it's something that we should definitely clarify. The other thing I wanted to mention is the reason that we prioritized metadata is that as a proxy implementer, right, one of our concerns is injection of headers, right, and actually, you know, having to worry about if you have some sort of chain of these extensions, right, where maybe not all of them have the same trust levels, right? You don't want an extension injecting an endpoint, right, that is not from the endpoint picker. So that's just a consideration, right? Like there are obviously other ways to deal with it if you do use a header for this, but metadata is just a more structured way that gives us a bit more control right now. So that's just another reason, or providing some context into one of the reasons for why metadata is preferred right now.
Yeah. So regarding the point of if the two fields are used, the header and the metadata. So currently there is no real decision which one is used. This item, this point specifies that the protocol does not define what takes precedence. So we actually don't have any expected result when the two of the options are used. Maybe we can, I mean, if Nginx should anyway implement their own like xproc alike, maybe we can just change the string from Envoy, but then again, we get back to breaking changes, which we probably don't want to do, or we can just make it configurable, and then the default value is Envoy. Yeah. Anyway, I'll stop here to have some time for Rob to talk about the multi-cluster topic, which I know might take some time, unless anyone wants to add. Oh,
Yeah, I just lowered my hand. So
yeah,
really quick,
sorry.
that namespace name for the metadata, it was configurable before. And then we removed it. So because at that time we didn't really have a use case, and I had issues. I got to go back look at the issue because Nir, I want to say you actually submitted a PR to remove the configuration here just in like the last month. So
Yeah.
you know, this is something that that can be added back. We just removed it because we're trying to reduce the amount of configuration that we were exposing, and there was really no use case at that point. So it can be done, and just needs to be exposed as configuration.
So back to Sailor, I'll just ask last question and then we'll move to the next topic. Do you think if we keep using the metadata, but then change instead of using directly Envoy, do it configurable, and then defaults is still Envoy, but in Nginx we can specify like nginx.lb and these kinds of examples. Do you think it's reasonable?
I think so. Yeah, I mean, I haven't looked too deeply in yet in terms of what this sort of communication between the two will look like, but at a high level, I think that's probably just fine. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Sounds good. So I'll add that information in the open issue that I opened about switching to headers. All the information that was discussed here, both on not breaking the protocol and allowing a configurable namespace. Great. So to the next item, Rob, all yours.
Cool. Okay. I don't know how long this will take. It may be short. But Becca is out today, so I figured I'd jump in and talk about this some more. I responded to most comments. If I haven't gotten to anything, it's just I ran out of time, but hopefully most things have a response now between Becca or myself. I guess, I know we're all very focused on 1.0, so I don't want to distract from that too much. But I would like to just mention this exists. I'm happy to continue conversation, whether here or on the PR. I do want to keep it moving forward. My stretch goal here is to have something that can work in time for KubeCon. So that's, 2 months away basically. So we'll see what we can do. But yeah, just really, really interested. I appreciate all the great feedback we've gotten on this so far. If there's anything that would benefit from some discussion in this meeting, that's great. Otherwise, we can just keep the discussion going on the PR. No strong opinion. Just want to remind people this exists and we're continuing to move forward with it.
Yeah. So I reviewed it a while ago while the PR was opened. I unfortunately haven't got time to get back to it because of the time constraints of the release and working on some items. But I do want to, I'm not sure, maybe you're aware of it, but I do want to let you know that there is a new working group that is being formed called AI Gateway. And the two sponsors of that group, yeah, I think you are aware of it, right, Rob? Two sponsors, at least today, are SIG Network and SIG Multicluster. And I think this topic might be really relevant to that working group. We already have like 3 LGTMs from the steering committee, so we need one more, and then the working group will be initiated. I assume it's going to be next week. They promised they will finalize the review this weekend. So I'm assuming next week we could start discussions. And I'm also assuming that you might get really relevant feedback from the people there.
Yeah, I'm definitely happy to take this wherever there would be useful feedback. Ultimately, I think working groups don't own APIs, so the API would still have to be owned here.
Yeah.
But I'm happy to take it wherever. We've taken it, taken this proposal to SIG Multicluster already. And obviously here, and happy to discuss it at the working group as well. I know there's non-trivial overlap between the people in that, I think potential or in progress working group. And so, yeah, I'm happy to talk about this wherever more feedback is good. But as long as we agree that this is the final landing spot, then we can get advice from anyone. But ultimately, I think it's the call of this project, what we do as far as moving forward.
Do you think there is another alternative to where it could land? Could it land in a different sub project, not in Inference extension? Is there such an option?
So there's a stretch, right? So in the original doc, I had an alternative too that was like, hey, we can redo, and I didn't say redo, but we can have like a whole new version of multi-cluster services that is more, not tied to the service backend type. It could be more generic. You could export any kind of backend. That's interesting, but that's a long process that I don't really want to hold us up. I think the fundamental thing of inference pool is we're not just trying to export a group of endpoints. We're trying to export a group of endpoints and endpoint pickers, right? And the endpoint picker awareness feels very unique here. Like the way that I expect most gateways are going to make their cluster selection is based off of metrics from endpoint picker. That's something that doesn't really translate outside of this project right now. So it's hard for me to find another one that's a really good fit. But yeah, that's my take.
Yeah. Yeah. Do we get any feedback from Kellen or Abdullah about this proposal? So haven't seen any.
I need to take a closer look, to be honest. I remember discussing it with Rob before, but Rob makes a fair point that the endpoint picker is kind of a key component of what I think the proposal is, right? It's multi-cluster inference pools. So that seems reasonable to keep it in this repo. I'm a little concerned about the AI gateway scope, and I'm concerned about overreach. Inference is already pretty fast moving, so I think the more that we can keep self-contained, the more agile we'll be able to be. So I think figuring out how we do multi-cluster inference pools within our own repo makes sense. But again, I need to dive into that proposal more deeply.
Yeah, same here. So I'm planning on reading the proposal more into the details next week after we finalize the release. I see hands, not sure who was first. Yeah, but I'll guess Denyon. Just a guess. I'm assuming it was you.
Yeah, not sure, but yeah, thanks for calling on me. So this is an issue, a topic that has been on my radar for a while, but I just have not had the bandwidth to work on it up until just the last couple of days. And so I kind of have a rough Google Doc where I'm gathering my thoughts, along with kind of like an example GAML definition of the inference pool import resource. I was hoping to have it a little bit further along where I could actually throw it on today's agenda and kind of discuss it in like an open forum. I mean, I could, but it's still pretty rough. So if we do have time, I don't mind, sharing and kind of walking through that a little bit. I am going through the pull request and adding some more comments. I would say just in general, I think maybe this pull request I feel like is maybe a little premature. I think we're still in the kind of the phase of like Google Doc, lots of kind of discussion, collaboration, makes it a little bit more difficult maybe in the pull request, but we can figure that out.
Yeah.
And Yeah, as I kind of go through this exercise, there's just a lot of different ways that I could see implementers wanting to implement multi-cluster. From a gateway-based approach to potentially an EPP like scheduler plugin, to something hybrid. And so, yeah, I mean, we just need to be able to provide flexibility, right? Here's another example of flexibility where, there's an implementation that may say, hey, one of our requirements is pod cider connectivity across the different clusters, right? Makes things a lot easier. But there may be another implementation that says, no, we want, we want to be able to support, cluster connectivity through gateways, right? And so we have to kind of, Rob, this has kind of brought me back to kind of the early gateway API days where it's like, we need to be able to support the simple, but we also need to kind of be able to support the more advanced use cases as well, and being able to provide an API that's flexible enough to handle this, that's wide spectrum of use cases.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shmuel, you're next.
So actually, my comments on this topic, I want to actually add a topic. I just can't update the meeting notes. I requested edit. I requested edit authority, but I didn't get it quite yet. But anyways, if we're done with the topic, I'll happily talk about my topic. If not, I'll happily wait. So we get to go ahead.
Sorry, Shmuel, the dock owner is driving.
What? Oh, I can update the doc now?
Oh, no, I'll give you edit access in just a minute here.
No problem. So you continue with the topic, this topic.
Yeah, so do anyone want to add like more comments, more anything about multi-cluster proposal, or should we just keep collaborate on the open PR and Git? Going once, going twice. Yes, and Viv, I see you also interested. So yeah, let's collaborate, continue the collaboration on the proposal, on the Git issue, PR. Yeah, Shmuel, I think you have time to talk about.
Okay, so hopefully it's real quick. So VLM has this feature that people in LMD land consider to be very hot. It's called data parallel. Okay, it comes in many flavors, but one of those flavors is that within a single pod, they run multiple instances of VLM. Okay, each VLM has its own. It runs on its own port. Each one exposes a single port, and that port you can do metrics, you can do inference calls, all the things work. There is some behind the scenes communications. There's some complications with health, but we'll ignore that for the moment. And I'm in the middle of, I opened an issue about supporting this on IGW, and I'm fairly close actually to completing the PR to do the work. The reason I raised the topic today is because there's one change to the overall system. And that is that today, there's a parameter which you can use to specify the metrics port separately from the port specified in the inference pool. Okay. This goes away in my PR. Okay. The two ports become always the same. In other words, when you talk to a VLM instance, you're always talking to the same port as you would do it, whether you're sending requests to it or whether you're getting metrics from it. And this is to support multiple entities in there. The goal is to have, and the way you would tell EPP that this is happening is in the inference pool. You guys made target ports an array. Well, there'd be more than one port in there. Okay, and there'd be the list of ports, for all of the instances running on the cluster. They will all be the same, which is the current assumption within the code in general. Okay, so you could have 1 to 8 instances running there, and you'd have up to 8 ports inside target ports, and off you would go. Okay, and what I wanted was feedback. Was this a really bad idea that I was killing this ability to change the port, or not? see a comment already. Yes, Dan.
Daniel?
Yeah, I have my hand up. I'm just, Shmuel, thanks for sharing that. I'm trying to just make sure I understand what you're sharing, and that is you're saying that, right, because I'm looking at like the example EPP deployment manifest, and you're saying that with this new pattern that's emerging within VLM is that instead of you defining a separate port for metrics, no, that's on the EPP. No, you're actually talking on the VLM
Correct.
endpoint.
So no, so
Okay.
so Daniel, let me explain again. Let me try to say it again. Try to do a better job this time. One of the parameters of the EPP is a metrics port. You can give it the metrics port that it uses when it talks to the VLM instances.
Yeah.
Okay. Now that's optional. If you don't specify that today, if you left it, do false to 0, and then what's used is the target port within the inference pool. Okay, which is sort of the standard thing. Most VLM instances, you can talk to the same port, sending /v1/completions, for example, or /metrics, and both will work happily. Okay, and my PR will force the latter, ability. I will take away the ability to specify the port, since if you're running multiple, using data parallel more than one, then that doesn't work at all. And so I see another hand raised, 2 even, 1 at least. Kellen.
So remind me, is this a breaking change to the inference pool API?
No.
Okay.
It's
No,
not change in the CRD, it's just in the command line arguments. So I'll try also to explain maybe.
Right. Yeah, that's right. Because we do.
And this is why we kind of defined multiple like target ports here just a few weeks ago, right? Okay.
There is a relaxation of code here and there where it checks for only one port in there. That will be relaxed.
So I think the command line argument makes sense if there is only one target port, and then you can override it using the command line argument. But then once we extend it to multiple ports, which is unavoidable because that was the whole idea of making the ports to an array, I think it doesn't really make sense to have a command line argument to override a port, right? We don't want to like specify multiple ports in command line argument. So it sounds okay to me, unless there is some concern. Kellen, your hands is still up.
Yeah, sorry, it was accidental, but I'll chime in. We can probably just force override that. Like if there's more than one port specified in the inference pool, then we document that is treated as the metrics port as well.
So do you suggest to keep the command line argument and then use it only in cases that there is a single port in the CRD?
Yeah, just for now, just because I don't want to break people that may have had different ports.
Okay, I guess.
I mean, it's fine for now because we have this.
Code, but it's okay.
Yeah, we have this limitation of the array size, which is enforced to be array of size 1. But I assume that either in the next release or the one after, we're going to get rid of that restriction and use the multiple ports to implement DP.
I was planning to do that within my PR.
To remove the restriction?
Yes.
Yeah, I think this is the gentle point here. I think we want to remove the restriction only when we add the real use case of actually using multiple ports. So until that happens, we should probably keep the restriction. Rob,
Adding the PR that supports DP does it, right? Doesn't it do it?
Yeah. For DP, we need it for sure. So Rob, I'm interested in your thoughts about it.
So just to make sure I'm understanding, this would be adding a configurable port for metrics, or maybe I misunderstood the thread.
No, it's
No,
other
the
way
other way
around.
around. The other way around. Today, it's possible. So the metrics port is defaults to the port in the CRD.
Yeah.
But
No.
you can override it by specifying a metrics port in this command line argument. So Shmuel is talking about removing that, and Kellen suggested that we keep it, but use it only if the ports array is of size 1.
Yeah. I mean, I think that seems fine. Like, I mean, we obviously moved to ports array to allow for multiple ports. So
Yeah.
that seems like a reasonable. Yeah, I think that seems reasonable. Daniel, I think you were going to say something.
I was going to say, just when we lift that max on the array above 1, if you can just make sure that you tag some of the implementation or the leads from the different implementations, because I know on the 2 different implementations I'm part of, they're both assuming a max array size of 1. So just to give the implementations a heads up.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, I think so, Shmuel, if I got it right from the members here, so I think it should be fine. Let's keep the command line argument as long as we use one item in the ports array, and let's keep the restriction until the actual PR that uses multiple ports is going to be merged, and then we remove also the restriction.
Okay.
Yeah, sounds like we covered all the topics we had today. Wow, that's great. Good call. So you got back 3 minutes. Thanks, everyone. See you next week.
Yep. Thank you.
Thanks
Tatiana.
all.
Yeah.
Bye, guys. Bye.